On a quiet morning in April 1467, the townspeople of Genazzano, a small town of Rome, gathered to celebrate the feast of St. Mark. As the liturgy concluded, with unearthly glow, a mysterious cloud descended upon the unfinished wall of their parish church. The air was still, the people watched in awe, and when the cloud gently lifted, it revealed the delicate image of the Virgin Mary tenderly holding the child Jesus. In this video, we are seeing the beautiful history of Our Lady of Good Counsel. In the quiet and charming medieval town of Genazzano, there is a special and sacred image placed on a side altar in the church of Our Lady of Good Counsel. This sacred image shows the Blessed Virgin Mary gently holding her baby Jesus, and the child Jesus lovingly wraps one of his arms around his mother's neck. He pulls her head gently towards him, creating an intimate and warm embrace between the mother and the son. Before I give a detailed view upon this sacred image's history, it is important to know the history of the shrine in which the image is enshrined. In the 3rd century, an order was given to build a church on top of the ruins of the ancient Roman temples dedicated to the Mother of God under the invocation of Mother of Good Counsel. As the years passed, the small town of Genazzano started growing. More people moved there, and slowly the church became more and more well known. People began to visit the church with great devotion. Later, during the Middle Ages, the Franciscans and the Augustinians built their monasteries close to the church, showing its growing importance. However, as the years went by, the church began to wear down. The structure became old and weak, showing clear signs of damage. Also, the church was too small for the many faithful, especially for large and special religious ceremonies. It is also at this time a nobleman named Prince Pietro, whose family ruled over the town, took an important step. The nobleman handed over the oldest church in Genazzano, the Church of Our Lady of Good Counsel, along with its parish responsibilities, to the hermits of St. Augustine. Coming back to the damaged and crumbling old church, the people of the town prayed very faithfully and sincerely, hoping for the church to be repaired. And money was a big problem. There weren't enough funds to fix the church. This is when Our Lady, Mother of Good Counsel, who looks after those in need, chose to act through one of her humble and faithful children, Petruccia, a holy woman who belonged to the 3rd order of St. Augustine. After her husband died in the year 1436, Petruccia was left with a small inheritance. Living by herself, Petruccia spent most of her time in prayer and served faithfully in the Church of the Mother of Good Counsel. It made her very sad to see the poor condition of the church, and so she began to pray deeply for its restoration. And eventually, she decided to take action herself. After receiving permission from the friars, she donated all her wealth to start the restoration work. Petruccia hoped that once the project began, others would feel inspired to join in and help complete it. But once the work began, Petruccia, who was already 80 years old, realized that her savings could only cover a small part of the construction. Sadly, no one else came forward to help or donate. As a result, only the chapel of St. Biagio of the whole church was able to rise about 3 feet. And then all the work stopped because there was no more money. People began to mock Petruccia. Some of her friends and neighbors even laughed at her, calling her foolish. Others even openly scolded her in public, saying she had acted without wisdom. But Petruccia never gave up. She would calmly and confidently tell everyone, "My dear children, do not worry about how things look right now. I promise you, the Blessed Virgin Mary and our Holy Father St. Augustine will finish this church that I have started." Then came the day that changed everything, April 25, 1467. On April 25, 1467, the town was celebrating the feast of its patron saint, St. Mark. It was a Saturday and a large crowd had gathered for the special mass and celebrations. Everyone came together in front of the church of the Mother of Good Counsel, even though the building still stood unfinished. At around 4 in the afternoon, something extraordinary happened. A heavenly melody, sweet, beautiful, and unlike anything the people had ever heard, began to fill the air. Everyone looked up in awe. High above, they saw a white cloud, glowing with thousands of brilliant rays of light, gently moving toward them from the sky. The cloud, filled with the divine beauty and light, slowly descended over the unfinished wall of the chapel of St. Biagio, the very place that Petruccia had started to rebuild. Suddenly, the bells in the church tower began to ring all by themselves. Not just that, every single bell in the entire town began to ring. The bright rays of light shining from the little cloud slowly began to fade, and also the cloud slowly began to fade. As the cloud dissolved, there suspended on the wall a glorious painting. A tender fresco of Our Lady with the child Jesus. The fresco painting of Our Lady attached itself on the unfinished wall of the chapel, where there was no support structure or framing, no nails or glue. And miracles started happening almost immediately. People who were sick began to recover. Those who were suffering found comfort and hope. And this holy image became known as the icon of Our Lady of Good Counsel. The painting is a type of fresco. Fresco, which normally means paint applied onto wet plaster, so the colors soak in and become part of the wall. In the same way, this miraculous image is painted on a very thin layer of plaster. Experts call it as thin as eggshell. And that means the painting is very fragile, yet it stood for centuries and even to this day. According to an old tradition, the miraculous image of Our Lady had once been greatly honored and venerated in the land of Albania. For many years, people from far and wide came to visit the little church in Shkodër, where the image was kept. The Blessed Virgin Mary, through this image, poured out many blessings, healings, and graces upon everyone who came to her with faith. The little church eventually became the most important place of pilgrimage in all of Albania. It is said that even the great Albanian hero Skanderbeg, who led battles against invaders, visited the shrine more than once. He came with deep devotion, praying earnestly to the Virgin Mary for victory and protection in war. But with Skanderbeg's death, the peaceful land of Albania was in danger. A powerful enemy, the Turks, were approaching, bringing destruction. The people were afraid that the holy treasure, the miraculous painting of Our Lady, would be lost or defiled. Among the people were two faithful Albanians, Giorgio and Des Calves, two young men who loved the image dearly. Their hearts were torn by the thought of leaving their very dear and loving treasure of Albania in the hands of the enemy in order to flee the Turkish terror. Confused and heartbroken, they went to the church and stood before the sacred image. With all their heart, they prayed to the Virgin Mary. That night, the Blessed Virgin Mary, consoler of the afflicted, came to them in a dream. In the dream, Our Lady commanded them to prepare to leave their country and that they would never come back again. But they must not be afraid. Our Lady also revealed that the sacred image itself was going to leave Albania to protect itself from the profanation at the hands of the Turks. And our mother gave them one last clear instruction. They must follow the painting wherever it goes. The next morning, the two men returned to the church. As they stood there in silence, something extraordinary happened. Right before their eyes, the sacred image lifted itself from the wall where it had been for over 200 years. it gently rose from its niche and seemed to float in the air. Then the image was surrounded by a white cloud. Now we know that the sacred image was a fresco. That means the painting is painted directly onto the wall. It's a type of mural painting painted upon freshly laid lime plaster, making the painting an integral part of the wall. And this is what makes this story particularly miraculous, that despite being a wall painting, the image is said to have detached from the wall and enveloped in a white cloud and traveled through the air to Genazzano, Italy. The painting, now wrapped in this mysterious white cloud, began to move through the air, leaving its church and the city of Scutari behind. It flew high in the sky, heading toward the Adriatic Sea. Giorgio and De Scalvis followed the image on foot. After traveling for about 24 miles, they reached the seashore. But the sacred image did not stop there. It moved over the sea. Legend has it that the two men with unshakable faith stepped into the water and began to walk across the surface of the sea. For a number of days and nights, Giorgio and De Scalvis continued to follow the miraculous image. It took them over the sea and onto the shores of Italy. From there, across mountains, rivers and valleys. And finally, they arrived at the broad plains of Lazio. From there, they could see the city of Rome in the distance. As they reached the city gates, the image, wrapped in white cloud, vanished from their sight. Though heartbroken, the two men didn't give up. They began searching all over the city of Rome, going from church to church, asking everyone if a miraculous image of the Virgin Mary had appeared. Most people thought they were crazy and didn't believe their story. But then, not long after, the amazing news about the miraculous image to the sound of a heavenly music that had appeared in the air and rested on the wall of the chapel of the Church of Our Lady of Good Counsel began to spread throughout the city. With eyes filled with happiness and tears, the two young men rushed to Genazzano. When they arrived, they saw, suspended just above the wall, the very same image they had followed all the way from Albania. From that time forward, the painting remained in Genazzano, continuing to pour out graces and bring peace to all who came to her. Yes, the Catholic Church absolutely acknowledges and approves the story of the two Albanian men, Giorgio and De Scalvis, as part of the tradition and devotion to Our Lady of Good Counsel of Genazzano. According to records and Christian tradition, investigations were carried out at the time after the image miraculously appeared in Genazzano, and it is Pope Paul II who appointed two bishops to investigate. And it is confirmed that the fresco of Our Lady is the one in Scutari, because there was indeed an empty space in the plaster wall of the church, and the empty space is the exact size of the portrait. While not every tiny miraculous detail is approved and confirmed, like walking on water or the exact movements of the cloud, the church officially upholds the story as a venerable tradition and has promoted it with reverence. And this was a beautiful history of Our Lady of Good Counsel. Thank you so much for watching.